in like these red pill spaces has to say about anything. Like, honestly, like, I don't care. It's not important to me. You know, if I am in a conversation with him and it's a good conversation, great. Maybe the dude is actually really cool. I don't know. Maybe he's not cool. Like, I have friends that don't like him. I judge people based on how they treat me and how that experience goes. So I'm not even here to slam on this guy for anything personal. But what I did notice, all right, is that a big debate that had been going around was on having these open relationships. And he's in this marriage with this Melina chick, and they got these open relationship situation, and everything's like cool and liberal and awesome and open. And now, of course, you know, they're getting a divorce because she is monkey branched to another guy. This is a very predictable scenario. This is not a situation that anybody should be surprised at. And the cold hard truth is that you can have relationships where the man, or both the man and girl, a woman can share other women, right? And can have other women in the relationships. And those can last and have long-term success possibility. Or you can have a monogamous scenario that could have long-term success possibility. But you can't have a open polyamorous scenario where the girl can go out and sleep with other men and have long-term success. Not really. It's a biological, neurological impossibility. Okay, and I'm going to explain and go through that because a lot of people don't really understand why or how that's true. All right, I will put links to different studies and different things. All right, just some different research papers and stuff. I will, at the end of this, go back into the show notes and put those links in. All right. But let's look at a couple different things. First, let's look at the history of mating. And so I've talked about this on other shows, but they were a long time ago. So we'll cover this now, which is, you know, it's the history of mating, how we started out. So we've been around for a couple 100,000 years. For most of our history, we were in a structure where it was more of an open mating scenario, right? So it was multi-male, multi-female, polyamory, okay? And that's where you would have, but we've looked at in this paper, I have to show you this. See, there's a lot of confusion about how mating went down, and people think, there's some people making the argument with not very good evidence behind it that monogamy was somehow the predominant thing throughout all of human history. This is not true. Okay, this is usually driven by ideology and people, you know, usually Christians or people with very serious beliefs towards monogamy. They want to, you know, it's emotionally driven. We'll put it like that. It's not evidence driven. Okay, monogamy was not around for most of human history. Now, that doesn't mean to say that your Christian marriage that's monogamous or whatever isn't valuable. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. But it has only been a few thousand years that monogamy was a predominant thing. All right. So that's just the way it is. Most of our history, we were polyamorous to some degree. That said, okay, it's not just this open, hippie, you know, woke polyamory that people today are trying to propose as the idea. That's not how it went. Okay, these were male-driven patriarchal societies and tribes that through most of the world, most of histories, we want to compare, okay, human beings to other primates. We were chimpanzees. We were not bonobos because we had predators. We had other threats of other tribes. And when you have threat, okay, our mammalian development moves towards chimpanzee, all right, which is a male-dominated social hierarchy and social structure with alpha males, beta males, and ostracized males that don't mate at all, right? And some of those they're on some tier of beta-ness or whatever. The alpha male in the tribe, all the women mate with this dude and want to mate with this guy. There's a hierarchy among the betas, but the betas get mated with when she's not ovulating. All right. So the whole alpha fucks beta bucks thing. Well, that a little red pill saying, but that strategic pluralism, that's what was likely around through the polyamorous tribe period. And those tribes were driven by men. So it was men that were in charge, and they were the ones deciding who mated with who. And that's how it went. So it wasn't this open situation where everybody's banging everybody with no consequences. These are small tribes, maybe 30 to 70 people. 70 would be a big tribe, right? We're talking hunter-gatherers. And the number of mateable people in the tribe of age of mating, having kids, were much smaller than that, because a tribe of 40, 50 people, a certain percentage of those are going to be elderly that can still move and travel. A certain percentage of those are going to be younger kids. Then you're going to have your men and women who are mateable, right? Some of those guys are going to be not ostracized and not mateable. The women aren't going to want to sleep with them. And then those women are going to go for the most valuable men in the tribe in that hierarchy. And because the tribe took care of the children together, everything was communal in a sense, that prevented infanticide within the tribe. When other tribes got involved, infanticides happened, right? When warring tribes would conflict, then kids were killed. But inside the tribe, infanticide was not an issue, and paternal jealousy was not as big of an issue because you didn't know whose kid was who. And so she might bond with somebody of a lesser status because it was convenient for the tribe for her to do so. She might have social pressure to do that bonding by the males in the tribe and by the women even. And then she may mate with the more alpha, higher genetic quality when she's ovulating and get pregnant by that guy. And how do we know that this is the case? We know it through genetic studies, and we know it through biology. We know through the genetic studies, and we'll post that resource, that high percentages of females had offspring compared to the males. It's like 75% or higher of women mated and had offspring, whereas we're only a product of 40% of males, okay, throughout history. So, we're a product of a much smaller percentage of males who made it. Now, that doesn't mean that in these smaller tribes, some of the lesser or lower status males didn't ever mate. They may have had some sexual opportunity, but that would have been when she wasn't ovulating. It would have been pretty scarce. The guys at the top got all the sex. The rest got zero or very little, okay? And that's how it went through most of our history. This caused this mate selection stuff. And I see some of the super chat guys. I appreciate it. I will get to them as I take breaks for stuff, right? I'm talking about this. But as we see this stuff develop, okay, this developed a mating strategy that is in our DNA that exists today. And there seems to be a lot of confusion about this mating strategy and a lot of debate about it. But I don't think that people are, we'll say, they're ideologically driven through these debates. I'm having this discussion, and it's not coming from an ideological perspective. It's coming from just a factual, biological, and neurological discussion. What works for human beings based on our biology, based on our neurology. You can take this information and do what you want with it. You can take it to your church. You can take it to your synagogue, your mosque, or you can take it to your atheist Carl Sagan meeting. I don't know. Whatever it is you're going to, whatever it is you do or don't do, it doesn't matter. This is not an ideological discussion where a lot of traditional conservative Christians hop on board and they want to, make it ideological and all about Jesus. hey, that's fine. That's a conversation for you to have another time over at church, right? But let's just look at the biology and stuff that we're looking at. And I will say and make the argument to those who are religious: if your religion's true, it's gonna line up with historical facts and biological and neurological facts about human beings. It should. If it doesn't, then either the science is wrong, which the science isn't wrong. Hate to break it to you, or you're wrong. So you may need to alter some of your beliefs if some of those things don't quite match up, right? But challenge your beliefs. That being said, this is not an ideological thing. It's not a political argument. People seem to not be able to get out of it because most people, again, are having lower level discussions. You guys and we are having smarter discussions, right? So now there's a lot of confusion about this history because of there's some women out there and some hyper feminist. In fact, one of them was on my Twitter. It was rather comical. That believe that no, societies are really matriarchal. That societies are really women led and driven, and that's the best approach or structure. So, some have gone so far into their feminism that it's way into that department, that women should be ruling the world. We've never had a successful society where women were in charge of that society. It's not ideological. This is just a fact. If we had that, then we would have that today. Now, have we had queens? Sure. Have we had women in power? Yeah, of course. But we had a lot of men behind those women there to make decisions, enforce power, and work collaboratively with those female leaders. But those female leaders were a very small percentage comparison to the large amount of male leaders that we still have today, right? So it's not this idea of where it comes from that we were in some sort of matriarchal society and that we were bonobos back then is false. But they use the fact that we honored the female and we honored women, which we are doing a lot less of now, which is unfortunate. The unfortunate pushback on feminist ideology is that we as men in society, not me personally, hopefully not you, but we don't honor our women the way that we did when feminism wasn't cramming ideology down people's throats. So honoring women was done throughout cultures and societies. So you had lots of deities in certain Hinduist religions, certain, indigenous religions that were women, right? Deities and, that were female characters, female figures. A lot of honor was done towards the female, but that doesn't mean the society wasn't male driven. It just means that there was a lot of honoring done to fertility and to females. Okay. So some people will take that information and the honor that men had, pushed towards women in motherhood and, and that representing matriarchal figure, they will make this argument, which is a false argument, that means that the society really was run by women. No, it was run by men honoring women, right? And when women became in charge, quotes, because it was through cooperation of men that put them there. You know what I mean? And all of the leadership from that queen on down was generally male. It's just the way things were because women had the ability to carry the babies and to be mothers. Men had to drive society just the way it was, okay? It's kind of important part of this discussion to understand the concept of males honoring women, because it also will translate to how we neurologically respond to sex and love and relationships and why polyamory will not work, okay? When I say polyamory, I mean where it's open and women, all right? Yeah, not an ideology thing. It just is what it is. Now let's talk about the conflict that people have and that sometimes happens on the internet over mating strategy and what is considered viable for mating strategy. And so we have a conflict that we put it between assortative mating as a strategy or understanding and hypergamous mating. Let's see if I can throw a thing up here, a little diagram. And so hit the present button. This is where I press buttons, and we all have to bear with me. All right, sharing the screen. Let's see here. I'll just do entire screen is the way to go here. So sharing the entire screen. There we go. Sharing the entire screen. Okay, so now we got this. Okay, so this has been put around the internet. It's not correct, by the way. This is not correct. But the claim is that this idea of hypergamy and women trying to mate with the top tier men, that's not real. Okay, that female notch counts and going up and stuff, and guys not having mating opportunities isn't because women are choosing the top tier males. They think that this is a myth, and what they're promoting is an assortative mating concept. All right, which is to say, okay, you got 20% of men and women that are promiscuous with one another, and they're sleeping together. And then you have this assortative low promiscuity, which based on their value, they're basically having one partner for a lifetime kind of a thing, which we know isn't true because how many people are virgin marriages, right? Not very many. And so, but they're looking for like one partner scenario. And then you have a lower percentage of both men and women are not having sex at all. So that's this assortative mating concept that gets promoted as being like a real thing. But like I said, that's not exactly, let's see. Now I need to get out of this. Remove. Okay, there we go. So that's what gets promoted, that's not real. All right, and I'll explain why that is. But the idea, we know for a fact that hypergamous mating is real because of genetic studies. We know that we're a product of a small percentage of men and a large amount of women. So over time with mating, small amounts of percentages of men mated with multiple women having offspring. Throughout most of our history, hypergamous mating was the model, all right? Not necessarily an assortative one in the way that it's described. However, I will say that it's not that assortative mating is never a thing. Okay, it's just, and so what do I mean by that? Like, assortative mating is the idea that mating is not really by choice, but by proximity, which means that, so we could say, okay, in a tribe of 35 people, back in the gathering times, women had available the guys that were in that tribe. And so the guys and girls in that tribe mated with each other. Yes, that would be correct. So assortative mating isn't completely wrong in that, yes, it's the assumption that mating is not a choice is the wrong part, right? An element of that choice is proximity. Out of a 35-person small tribe, the couple of women, let's say there's 4, viable mateable women and only 2 males, right? Well, yeah, those 4 women will mate with those 2 guys. That's not a very large number of people.